Hello and welcome to Rolling with Two. I'm Will, and with me as always is the one who constantly says she's lost,
Sarah.
And today we're doing a two-player perspective on Atlas Lost: Rise of the New Sovereigns. Now, if you're interested in our review and opinion, check out our other video, Rolling with Reviews, Atlas Lost. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. Atlas Lost: Rise of the New Sovereigns is a tech tree resource management and civilization game. In the game setup, you play a combination of 3 of the 5 available techs. Each of these techs employs different board game mechanisms. You must use cards, collect resources, and employ tech to complete one of the 3 win conditions first. All right, Will, so how does the game change for 2 players?
So for 2 players, you'll take 2 NPCs, and these aren't AI anything. They just lay there as targets.
They're just boards.
They're just boards. Basically, the closer you get to 4 players, the fewer and fewer of these little NPC targets you need, so that when you get to 4 players, there's none. But since you're playing 2 players, you'll have 2 of them, and they're going to be targets for different types of technology. That's the only change for a 2-player game.
Right. So they don't actually do anything.
Nope. They don't control anything. Nope. They don't target anything. They don't win anything.
They just give you information and potential, like you said, targets.
Yes.
So the issues at a 2-player count. Well, we really couldn't think of anything that was an issue.
No, not for 2 players specifically. Yes.
But what it does well is it may be the best experience, especially for learning the game, because one of the things we're going to talk about in our accessibility portion is this game is very big. It's kind of overwhelming.
Has a lot of moving parts.
Had a lot of moving parts. So at 2 players, you have fewer competitors, less movement and craziness going on the board with
and you have each other to bounce ideas. I was like, am I doing this right? Am I seeing what I'm seeing? And like, yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
So we're not 100% sure because we have yet to be able to play this at 4 players, but
chances are we're trading it away and never going to get the chance.
Spoiler alert.
Another spoiler alert, there was a expansion for this game that involved a campaign and some small modularity for your tokens. We're not going to cover that.
Right, we didn't open that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to accessibility. The rules are overly verbose, which does not help comprehension at all.
Yeah, they don't call your little guys workers or anything. They're advanced teams, and they go on your tech
I think you're even forgetting a few words, because it feels like they use 3 or 4 words to describe everything.
Yes, and you don't just activate a tech that can be activated. You use the startup action of the activated tech.
Yeah.
It's something along those lines. But it also adds in, you activate the startup tech of the tech tree where your advanced team is located.
Yeah.
And pay the required resources.
This is one of those things where going theme heavy is detrimental, especially when something could be when you can use 1 word to describe each thing, and especially when you keep piling on more words that are generic, and then everything starts sounding the same.
Yeah, part of the problem probably comes from the fact that this is a Japanese game that was then translated by the team. So in the localization, they might have gathered up a few extra words that didn't exist in the original.
Yeah, it's possible. That is very true.
Yeah.
Moving on, the player colors might not be colorblind friendly. It's a very, I don't want to use the word dull. What's another word for dull color palette? It's a
sepia.
It's
maybe not
muted.
Sepia.
Muted is a much better word, because I'm not saying it's bad. It could be bad because they're very similar. So the problem being is you will put your pieces on the board with other people's pieces on the board, and so all your advanced team guys are the same shape, So if you can't tell the colors apart, you've got a problem.
Right.
And there are a lot of pieces in this game because each tech you use brings in a different set of pieces. So doing replacements is not an easy task here.
Yeah, the other weird thing is the fact that they made it so that all the pieces, or the meeples that go out on the board, stand up.
Yeah, on your personal board and on the main board, yes.
Which is how they were going about offsetting, I guess, the muted color palette.
Yeah.
But still, that's a lot of information to parse if you can't tell colors apart.
Right. And that then leads us to a mobility issue potentially is while your player board does have cutouts, it's not very deep, and so it's very easy to knock them over on your own little player board. Granted, there's only one part of your player board where it's important for them to stay in place until you remove them. The different tech ones, you don't really need to keep them there. There's no critical information. See, on your main player board, your advanced teams cover up icons. As you put them out on the board, it uncovers icons which affect actions. The technology ones do not. So
right.
If you really have problems with it, just lay them down. It's fine.
It just feels a little dicey. Well, actually, the ones that I found to be a little problematic were your actual resources, where you have your research, your data, and your command points, and those actually track those resources. Now, fortunately, there are notches to help hold it, but those cylinders are actually rather tall.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at how tall of cylinders they used for tracking those.
I think they made it so that they're easy to grab, but they're also easier to knock over.
That's true. That's very true. So as we discussed, this game has a very heavy cognitive... it will overload some people, and I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be that there are 3 different win conditions.
Yeah, you can either get to the end of the influence track, which everybody's on, and it just costs more and more resources to move up that. Or you can get 3 of these initiative tiles, and initiative tiles have prerequisites for gaining them, and then once you gain them, they'll have a number of resources that you have to accumulate, and if you have accumulated all of them, and they do
it's
stack on,
cumulative,
they stack on top of each other. If you have all those resources and those tiles, and 3 of them at least of the 4 that you play with, then you win. Or you get over 30 TP.
Yes.
And
those are technology points, which, you can earn in various ways throughout the game.
Yes.
So that can be challenging to keep in mind and stay focused.
Yeah, you're a lot of like, I don't know how to get to the end because I remember there are 3 things and I remember one of them. Oh no, 2 of them. What was the third?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wasn't doing that one.
Yeah.
What was the first 2? Ugh.
Yeah. So it can be very overwhelming because not only what your choices are on your turn can be overwhelming, but trying to get to that end goal can be a lot.
Yeah.
And going back to some of the details, there are a lot of icons. And sometimes they can be very small. So I found myself having to pick up things a lot and look at things very closely, especially the cards, the small text.
They also lend towards being a little bit more artsy.
Yeah, a little bit. So combine it all together with just an overwhelming amount of icons and
information.
Information overload is going to be what this game is about.
Yes.
All right, but what it does well, it does have a very large reference sheet with concepts and iconography. It's just that can also be very overwhelming, but at least it exists. So that's helpful. Like we talked about, the player boards do have cutouts for the tokens. It's better to have them than not at all.
Yeah, if they just told you to stand them up and like, no, I'm just going to push them off to the side. And reference them as needed.
And the modularity of the game, there's a lot in this box. There are 5 techs, each tech working differently. However, you will only use 3 of them each game. So it helps reduce what could be worse.
Yeah, because each tech will have a main board for you to operate on, as well as little components that go in front of you in your player area. And not seeing 2 of those techs really cuts down on the information overload. that it still has.
Right. I just can't imagine how difficult the game would be if you actually played with all 5 techs. Yeah. So I'm glad it's only 3
And
of
it's
the
modular.
5. And then that adds modularity, so that's great. Now, as much as I said the text was small, at least it is white text on a black background. So there's very high contrast. So it is very easy to read as long as the smallness of it doesn't trip you up. There are uniquely shaped pieces for each tech, so you will start learning, okay, these are the pieces for, economy, these are the pieces for religion, and so on. They are distinct, just not from player to player.
Right.
It's tech to tech.
Yeah.
And all the icons are unique. Again, just an overwhelming amount of information and learning.
And a touch artsy.
Touch artsy. Wow, neither of us can talk. But at least they are unique. And I feel like as we got going with the game, it got easier to work through the iconography. I just think this is going to have a really high learning curve.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's because, again, each tech will feature its own icons.
Yeah.
So seeing the repetition of the ones that you're currently working with helps solidify it as you play the game.
That is
it's
true.
just from game to game, especially if you switch up the text, those icons are going to pop in and out, and they're not always going to be there. So making sure you know the game from the start might be a little bit of a chore going into it.
Alrighty then.
All right, for 2 players, would you recommend?
I think so, although I do recommend watching our review on who exactly this is for, but I think in general I could recommend the 2-player experience.
Yeah, I had a decent time learning the game at 2 players, and that is how I would recommend people starting out. But again, I don't think it's for every 2-player count.
Right.
So again, like Sarah said, check out our review.
Yep.
Accessibility.
That's going to be a big maybe, because this is a heavy game with a lot of complexity and a lot of moving parts. So the accessibility is more on the comprehension of it, but even then there's a lot of stuff moving around too. So yeah, I think that's the main accessibility issue.
Yeah, it has it tries to do a lot and does do a lot.
Yes.
So therefore it demands a lot when it comes to just flat out learning the game.
Agreed.
All right, that'll do it for us. And Sarah,
Yes.
what does this game remind you of?
I don't know.
Any particular designer or...
Oh, no, but you do. I don't know. It doesn't really remind me, but go ahead.
For me, this game feels like an early designer who's trying to make a Lacerda game.
Yeah.
And Lacerda games are known for being big, giant, massive games in terms of their depth.
Right.
And this game is like a light Lacerda game.
Yes. As we discussed before recording, the downside is this still has a lot of rough edges.
Yes.
So it is not as smooth as Lacerda games.
Like a Vinhos or On Mars or...
But it is definitely trying to go for that level of depth. This is the deep end of the pool for sure.
So also keep that in mind.
Yep.
And why would you ever roll with just one when you can be
rolling with 2?
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with 2, that's TWO. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Discord, we have a channel on Tabletop Express. Check the show notes for the invite link.
If you have time, check out the other content Nanaman has found for you, because remember, he's rolling with you.